Hello and welcome to Moving Kentucky Forward. I'm Bruce Maples, your host, publisher of Forward Kentucky. This episode of Moving Kentucky Forward is a little bit different. Instead of talking about an issue in Kentucky politics, we're going to be talking about something that happened in a small town in Kansas. The local newspaper was raided by the police department, which, as will be mentioned in just a moment, has never happened in the United States as far as we know. I thought it would be valuable for our listeners and our viewers to consider why we need to pay attention to an episode like this in another state. So I invited Al Cross to come talk to us about this. Al is a well-known journalist, professor of journalism, and a member of the Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame. So let's hear what Al Cross has to say about this press incident in Kansas. So we're here with Al Cross, who is the director of the Center for Rural Journalism, and
it's hard to get right, Bruce. It's the Institute for Rural Journalism and Community Issues at the University of Kentucky.
Institute
I'm the
for
director
Rural
emeritus.
Journalism.
Today is my first day as director emeritus.
Director emeritus, that's right. For those people who follow journalism in Kentucky, Al Cross is a familiar and respected name. I could spend a lot of time talking about all his contributions to journalism in the state, but this is a little bit different moving Kentucky forward. This is not our typical interview about candidates or issues or whatever in the state. This is about the incident in Kansas. So, Al, we've published some stories on it, but for the sake of our viewers and listeners, why don't you give a quick summary of what happened in a small town in Kansas?
Well, without giving all the background, which is really intriguing and yet to be fully explained, last Friday, the police department and I think a sheriff's deputy in Marion County, Kansas, Marion being the county seat, raided the office of the Marion County Record, the weekly newspaper there, and the home of the publisher, which he shared with his 98-year-old mother, who had worked for the newspaper for 50 years and was so stressed about this, apparently, that she died the next day. The Committee to Protect Journalists says they know of no other raid on a newspaper office in the United States. And today, the county attorney said there was not probable cause for the warrant, and that the computers and other materials seized from the newspaper should be returned. And the publisher says they're going to subject them to forensic examination to make sure nothing's been messed with. And the paper was able to publish today. They had a 2-inch high headline saying seized, and then in smaller type, but not silenced.
So one of the things that happened, or the main thing that happened at the raid, was that they took everything. They took all the computers, all the equipment.
Well, they actually didn't take some old computers. They were able to resurrect some old computers, recreate some stuff, and get a paper out. But it took them all night.
They also took the cell phones, and they went to the publisher's mother's house and took her stuff, including an Alexa box, which I don't even know why they thought they needed that.
Yeah, it now appears that this was a police department gone mad because the newspaper was investigating the police chief's record in the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, and why he left that department. Just the sort of thing that would get a law enforcer mad about it. And it was exacerbated by the fact that they were at odds with a local restaurateur who threw them out of a meeting that a congressman was holding there. And they got a tip that the restaurateur was having trouble getting a liquor license for catering because she did not have a valid driver's license, having had a DUI and some other offenses. And they got a tip to this effect. And they confirmed the information on a state website, but they thought they were being set up, the publisher said.
Mm-hmm.
So they told the cops. That appears to have been their mistake. That the police chief apparently saw this as an opportunity to swear out an affidavit alleging identity theft or misuse of computer or whatever, and go after the newspaper. At least that's my conclusion from reading the available facts.
Right. So here's why I wanted to talk to you. Obviously, this is, a horrific situation, particularly for the publisher who lost both his equipment and his mother in a day or two. But why should we in Kentucky care? What is the point that we need to be looking at this and paying attention to?
If local newspapers are intimidated from looking into possible misconduct by officials or others, then our government and our society really don't work in the way that it was intended by the founders of this country. We have a First Amendment, which says that the freedom of the press shall not be infringed. And the basic rule in this country is the press is held accountable after the fact. We're held accountable for things we publish, and we're not held accountable for reporting and going after facts that haven't yet produced stories, which was the case here in Marion, Kansas. Reporting is not a crime, and people need to understand the difference. It's all the more difficult to do hard-nosed reporting in smaller communities, which is one reason the Institute for Rural Journalism was created. People who want to do good accountability and investigative reporting in small places need to know that people have their backs and that they can rely on us for support. And we go about holding up examples of work like that, examples to follow. That's why we give the Tom and Pat Gish Award for courage, integrity, and tenacity in rural journalism, named after the couple who published the Mountain Eagle in Whitesburg for more than 50 years, and the Al Smith Award for public service through community journalism by Kentuckians, Al being the co-founder of the Institute with UK.
So we've got this situation where freedom of the press was obviously abridged. Do you know of anything similar that has happened in Kentucky?
No. In fact, the Committee to Protect Journalists knows of nothing else in the country. Now, there have been instances of official intimidation and apparent retribution. In the case of the Mountain Eagle in Whitesburg, a Whitesburg city policeman pleaded guilty to torching the newspaper office. And a state police detective said he believed that the policeman was paid by coal operators who didn't like the Mountain Eagle's reporting on the coal industry. The paper had also been reporting about police harassment of young people, too. And that, you put two things together, and sometimes it makes a spark, and bad things happen. The Eagle published the next week. It changed its motto. Its motto had always been, "It screams." And the next week, the motto was, "It still screams." Very much like the Marion County Record today. I think every American has to stop and pay tribute, at least for a few seconds, to the people who are willing to devote their lives and their fortunes, if need be, to the cause of informing the public so that citizens can operate fully informed in a democracy. That's what the news business is about. That's what journalism is about. The news business is in trouble. Journalism will go on in some fashion, but the news business pays for journalism. And increasingly, the audience must pay for journalism because the old advertising-based model of news media, especially in newspapers, has been destroyed by the digital environment.
So, what would be your statement? And I don't want to recap what we just covered, but what would be your statement to a citizen of Kentucky who said, I really don't care if my local newspaper lives or dies?
Well, you would then ask, do you care if your local government raises your taxes or steals money or treats people unfairly? Because that's what happens without a watchdog to make sure that officials are following the law and otherwise doing right. There's an old saying that sometimes a watchdog engages in extraneous barking, but that's the reason you have a watchdog, to make sure that you get warned about things. So people who point to the occasional excesses of the news media have to realize that they're the watchdog on the people who have power. They are those who hold people in power accountable, and they do that on our behalf.
Al Cross, longtime journalist, professor of journalism, and a true hero to many people across the state in terms of all the work you've done for journalism. Thank you for weighing in on this, and let us hope that the newspaper in Kansas gets recompense that it deserves.
And let's hope that it inspires other people to follow their example and makes Americans realize the value of good local journalism.
That was Al Cross talking to us about the incident at the small weekly in Kansas and why all of us should care about it. As Al said, your local journalism outlets, your local reporters, are who keep your local officials accountable. That's an important, vital function of journalism at all levels. And we should be concerned if people in power try to shut down people holding them accountable. Thanks to Al for bringing his insights into this, and I hope we all pay attention to the importance of the freedom of the press. Thanks for watching and listening.